Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bibliovideo. This is the YouTube channel all about Canadian kids' books. Today, we are here with a very special guest, Catherine Gerbasi, who is the publisher at HighWater Press. Catherine, this is very exciting because I have never truly spoken to a publisher before. And so I actually wanted to start out this interview by asking you to describe a little bit what your role is at HighWater Press and maybe even how you got there, how long you've been there, anything else that you think we should know.
Okay, thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. I've been with Portage Main Press. HighWater Press is the imprint of Portage Main Press since 1998, so 26 years. I started out answering phones, supported the company's marketing activities, shipped books, became an editor and a manager, and then purchased the company from Mary Dixon in 2007 with Anna Lee. In 2009, we established HighWater Press. So as a publisher, I oversee our publishing program with a group of fantastic editors and others and ensure the ongoing financial viability of the company. I think those are probably the two main roles or spheres that a publisher works in. And of course, as a business owner, I oversee all aspects of the company.
It's a big job, and you've been there a long time.
Yes, I know I have. It's wonderful to see to talk to colleagues from across the country. And of course, within Manitoba too, I've worked at the same company my whole life, working life. So it's great to meet with other publishers and other industry professionals to see how they might do things differently.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a love of books.
Yeah,
That drive all of us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And part of why we're doing this interview, of course, is because HighWater Press, as you mentioned, an imprint of Portage and Main, is celebrating its 15-year anniversary. Now, knowing that you've been there truly the whole time, can you share a little bit about how HighWater Press as an imprint came to be, and maybe how you've seen it change over the last 15 years?
Sure. The company Peguis Publishers, which evolved into Portage and Main Press, always, and it was started by Mary Scorer in 1967. She focused on regional stories, which of course, being from this area, Treaty 1 territory, homeland of the Métis Nation, you can't help but pay attention as a publisher to Indigenous history here. So she was really, I think, at the forefront in Manitoba as both a publisher and a bookseller for championing the stories of Indigenous peoples here. Mary Dixon, who took over the company from Mary Scorer in the 80s, bought the rights to In Search of April Rain Tree from Pemmican Publications and other works by Beatrice Moisinier. So we sort of had, Annalie and I, that background, that awareness, that knowledge, the list, including Brunelda Wheeler's books of Indigenous stories. We're both from Winnipeg. We've lived and worked, went to school with First Nations, Métis kids. I mean, that's Winnipeg. It's the beauty of Winnipeg. So when David Robertson walked in our door with his graphic novel, Betty, we knew, one, that we wanted to publish his work, and two, that we wanted to dive deeper into publishing graphic novels. We saw it as a really exciting format and a somewhat perhaps radical way, and perhaps the best way to discuss Indigenous histories. And as the press evolved, it was like the perfect genre to present contemporary issues. And then, of course, we met Nigan Sinclair, who started the Debway series, introduced us to writers across Canada. And it just grew from there. It was a very sort of natural development based on positive and wonderful friendships with these merging writers, scholars, thinkers, and activists in our community.
Thank you so much for that. It's really interesting to hear kind of the roots of HighWater Press, as these are books that myself and I think so many readers across Canada are going to be familiar with. These books, as you mentioned, of course, with the strong Indigenous focus, have found their way into classrooms, libraries. Students are studying them. When I was teaching in the classroom, there are things that I taught and I shared with my students. I love that you specifically mentioned graphic novels. I think that's something else that has really had an impact. Of course, we know today it's very buzzy in children's publishing. Graphic novels, we know they're super popular with kids, but I think HighWater honestly was ahead of the curve on that in many ways, and used the graphic novel format to tell really important stories. And
yes, I would agree. Yeah. It started with, I think, 7 Generations, David Robertson's, well, Betty, 7 Generations. And of course, David used that format right from, the beginning to retell Indigenous histories and really complex, challenging histories to read about: residential school systems, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and other stories, mental illness, but all in a very dynamic and careful way.
In preparing for this interview, I discovered a list of HighWater Press's core values. You're kind of almost touching on these things: speaking truth to power, retelling history, living in a good way, and reading as resistance. How do the books that you publish really reflect these values, and what do they mean to you?
Well, these sort of pillars, I suppose, we used as a framework. Well, it was a framework that emerged when we decided to select 15 books, which was really hard from the press's last 15 years. And it kind of emerged as the collection that we were selecting became clearer, that there was a thread running through the titles. Speaking Truth to Power, for example, we selected In Search of April Rain Tree, Manitowoc, Indigenous Rights, and Spalaxum. These stories represent moments of resurgence, sharing truths, breaking barriers, pushing back against preconceived notions of Indigenous cultures and identity. They created space for new voices, expanded ideas about what it means to be Indigenous, as well as what Indigenous literature is and can be. So the titles selected for each pillar or each chapter in the catalog: retelling history, of course, This Place is included there, 7 Generations, A Girl Called Echo, all graphic novels that retell history, but do so in a way that, of course, has never been told before. It's not in history books. They are dynamic, exciting, authentic histories told from Indigenous Métis perspectives that, I think most Canadians really wanted to hear. Finally,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the way you describe the importance of retelling history and how that appeals to so many Canadians today. I really agree with you. HighWater Press books were a way for me personally to learn a lot more about Indigenous history. And I really devoured them because they helped me realize how little I knew, how little I was actually taught when I was in school. So much of Indigenous history was left out of my curriculums, and with the colonial history of our country, I think even more than left out, but like purposely left out, right? Purposely
Yes.
whitewashed or not included. And so that piece of retelling history also leads into that next pillar of reading as resistance. I think being able to tell the true history of the things that happened here is an act of resistance. And I think a lot of what HighWater Press is doing is an act of resistance.
Yeah, I do. I think reading, of course, reading is listening and thinking and contemplating and talking about what you've learned with others, which of course is so important. Um, and then perhaps committing yourself to what you've learned. I mean, it has the power, I believe, as it has for me, as it has for you, Spencer, and for many, many readers that I hear from, that it has changed their thinking. It's like they've woken up and seeing a world that was invisible but always there, made to be invisible by institutional, racism and colonization, of course, over the years. But you see through that thread, going back to the retelling of history, the power of so many of these nations, the power in the elders that kept, despite what was happening to them, to their nations, to their people, to their communities, they kept so many traditions and values alive and passed them down. And that's what is so powerful about a book like This Place, because it really focuses on the extraordinary people in extraordinary circumstances that survived, and not only survived, but protected what was so important about their communities, their traditions, and their values. And they live on today. It's incredible. And I think that's what has made, I think that's why books like This Place, A Girl Called Echo, a children's picture book, When We Were Alone, about residential school systems, are so valuable. One, there aren't history books, or if there are existing anymore in the educational sphere, they're completely out of date. But I think books like HighWater Press titles have replaced those outdated modes of seeing with these really exciting new history books, in a way, I guess you could say. Or
And they do such a great job of delivering that history in a way that also captures young readers' attention. Um,
Mhm.
I You mentioned A Girl Called Echo. It's a graphic novel series that we've highlighted on the channel before,
Right.
where a young Métis girl gets to essentially drift or travel back through time and connect with her ancestors. Um, when I spoke to Katerina Vermette about that series, she really emphasized how much research went into it and how much she wanted to get
Oh,
everything just right, and was really stressing over every particular date and names of
yeah.
people and places. And so being able to take like a science fiction time traveling story that really captures young readers' attention, but then the delivery of the history really is quite complete, and there's so much history in that series and the other books that you've mentioned.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think the illustrations really help uh, young readers transport themselves to different places and times in in these histories too.
Absolutely, yeah, it helps to really bring history alive. I love learning history through graphic novels because I'm the same way. It's not just young readers. I benefit a lot from being able to see what's going on and see the type of clothes they were wearing, the type of homes they were living in, right? Being able to
Yeah.
visualize those things also helps me to make important historical connections.
And the illustrators do a lot of research as well. There's a lot of collaboration with elders and knowledge keepers, museums, to ensure that the clothing, for example, as you mentioned, is accurate. Any tools and things like that are very accurate. Landscapes, etc.
Absolutely.
They're very time consuming to create, time
I can
consuming,
imagine.
beautiful, challenging projects, but when they're complete, oh, it's wonderful.
You mentioned landscapes. I'm going to use that as a segue into my next question. And you almost kind of touched on this at the start of our conversation, but I want to talk a little bit about Winnipeg and Treaty One territory. I visited Winnipeg for the first time this past summer. I was driving across Canada, and everyone told me that was going to be the most boring part of my drive, in a sense. But I stopped in Winnipeg for a few days, and it honestly was the highlight of my trip across Canada. I had an absolutely wonderful time at the Forks Historic Site and visiting the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. And there was so much history that really felt alive around me. And I learned a lot, and I did a lot of reflecting, and I just had a wonderful time. So I wanted to ask you more about what does it mean for the press to be a part of that community within that location that you have on Treaty One territory?
Yes, it's Winnipeg, Manitoba in general is a very beautiful place. It's complex. It's an exciting place to be. Um, and as a publisher, living and working on Treaty One territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we can't help but, of course, being involved with all these wonderful writers and academics and thinkers and activists like Beatrice Moisany, David Robertson, Tasha Spillett, Catherine Vermette, Michael Redhead Champagne. I mean, there's this wealth of and surge of creativity and activism happening here. And I really urge, I'm going to do a shout out for Megan Sinclair's new book, Winnibuck. It's mostly a series of his columns for the Winnipeg Free Press, but he expands on it to, touch on the comments that, of course, every Winnipegger hears whenever they leave the city. Oh, Winnipeg, it's flyover country, and Winterpeg, and all of these sort of undermining of things that we hear everywhere, Vancouver, Toronto. But we know we live in a sort of under the radar place where really exciting things are happening. And Spencer, I've heard from so many people after they spend time here, come away with, wow, what an incredible place, great communities, so much happening. And Nigon talks about, for example, Manitoba has the largest Indigenous population in Canada. 20% of our population in Winnipeg is comprised of Indigenous peoples. And therefore, our communities are interconnected. And he mentions the Maclean's article, I can't remember when it was published years ago, that Winnipeg is the most racist city in Canada. But it's also, as Nigon will argue, the place where more reconciliation is happening here than anywhere else because of the interconnection between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples.
Yeah.
I think we're advanced that way as well. So to be a publisher in this community is just, it's changed my life. I think the people that I work with at HighWater Press would all agree that it's what gets them up in the morning. It's really valuable work. And I also have enormous admiration for the creators that we work with. They mentor other creators, they're community activists, they're constantly working to make this place a better place. And I think they're very successful.
Yeah, the press does a wonderful job of representing Winnipeg. I want to say specifically that the first time I ever saw the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, which is an absolutely striking and beautiful building, and so anyone who's listening should look up a picture, or if I do a good job editing this, I will put a picture right here.
Yes.
But the first time I ever saw that building was in an illustration in Surviving the City, a graphic novel from Tasha Spillett Sumner and Natasha Donovan. And the two young protagonists in that story are spending an afternoon on the Forks, and you can see the building in the background. And I immediately had to Google what it was because I said, does that exist? Is that real? Or is this just something why did the illustrator include this massive big building in the background? And then I realized it was a real building. And
yes.
that's truly how I learned about the museum, and that's why I planned
Yeah.
to stop in Winnipeg and spend some time when I was traveling through. So really, your books directly brought me to the city and helped me to have that wonderful experience. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, sister. And of course, the museum is located at the Forks, which is the convergence of the Assiniboine and the Red Rivers, which flow out into Lake Winnipeg. And this was a meeting place, and still is a meeting place for First Nations people for, I don't know, millennia. I don't know, thousands of years,
Yeah,
thousands of years. So, and I
absolutely.
think you get a sense of that when you're there. It's a very special place, a really beautiful place.
Well, we were doing a great job of sending people to Winnipeg. I'll also say that they had great food while I was there too. Um,
I've heard that as well. We do
yeah.
have great restaurants.
As we get to the end of our interview, Catherine, I wanted to make sure to ask you, on a more personal level, since you've really been there from the start, what are some highlights or successes or achievements, or even maybe specific books or titles that you've worked on, whatever it might be, that really sticks out to you? I know that's a big question. I'm sure there's a lot over 15 years, but maybe you just want to share one or two highlights of things that really are important to you.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is my relationships that have developed and grown over the years. That's a personal, yeah, one of the most wonderful things that has happened to me is meeting writers like Beatrice Moisinier. We traveled to Churchill together, Churchill, Manitoba by train. She did readings along the way, readings in Churchill. Um, and it was extraordinary, the number of people that attended her readings and approached her. It was, young women, 14-year-olds that had read In Search of April Raintree, and grown men that said, I finally understand my auntie because of your book In Search of April Raintree. And it was so incredibly moving and so important. And it was just a fantastic trip. Developing graphic novels written by women, Tasha Spillett, Katharina Vermette, Jen Storm. We really made a concerted effort to bring more women into that genre in within our company. And they're really exciting books. And I think, looking to the future, I've thought, what do I want this company to be? Or where do I want it to, how do I want it to grow? How can I help it move forward in a good way, as we talk about as one of our pillars? And what that means to me would be to pass this company on to an Indigenous person that is from Winnipeg or Manitoba. So that is my goal, and I think that may happen sort of
Hmm.
soonish. So I'll let you know.
Well,
And that for me would be an achievement. Absolutely, is to start turning. Well, it's already started. It's happening,
mhm.
but to ensure that there's Indigenous peoples running publishing companies.
That's really powerful and so important. And that's exciting to hear that that's kind of the vision for the future of the press. Um, in the short-term future, I can tell you I'm excited. I got a sneak peek at the fall catalog and books that are coming out in the next few months. And always there are exciting books on the horizon from HighWater Press. So
Yes.
I really want to encourage everyone who's listening to this interview to take some time to go and visit um, HighWater Press's website or search for Portage in Main as well. Follow the social media accounts. You can find them searching for Portage in Main and HighWater Press, and keep track of the books that are coming out, because there's just really wonderful, positive work that's being done. And I really want to make sure that these books get into the hands of as many readers as possible.
Thank you so much, Spencer. Your support is fantastic.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And yeah, and if I might be so bold as to speak on behalf of the entire Canadian children's book community, thank you, Catherine, and thank you to HighWater Press for the work that you're doing. So important, the highlighting that you do of Indigenous stories and lifting up the voices of Indigenous authors. It's something that is making a difference for so many young readers. So congratulations on a 15-year anniversary, and we can't wait to see where you are 15 years from now.
Thank you so much.